You feel it before you see it. A pull. Not physical, something deeper, like gravity but wrong. It tugs at the part of you that dreams, that fears, that feels. Your hands are shaking, but not from cold. The air here doesn't have temperature. It doesn't have anything, just presence. The chamber stretches impossibly high above you. Gothic architecture carved from materials that predate human memory. Brass and stone and something else. Something that hums with a frequency that makes your teeth ache and your soul recoil. You're standing in a procession line. There are others ahead of you. Hundreds, maybe thousands. You can't see the end. The line moves forward, always forward, one shuffling step at a time. No one speaks. No one resists. Because you all know where this line leads. The Astronomican. The psychic lighthouse of the Imperium. The beacon that guides humanity's ships through the roiling madness of the warp. 10,000 years it has burned. 10,000 years it has devoured souls to keep its light alive. And today it's your turn to burn. My name doesn't matter anymore. In a few hours, I won't have one. I won't have memories or dreams or fears. I'll just be fuel. Psychic kindling for mankind's most terrible necessity. This is what happens when you're fed to the Astronomican. I was 12 when they found me. Not unusual. The black ships come for psykers young, before the talent fully manifests. Before you become a danger to yourself and everyone around you. Before the things in the warp notice you. I grew up on Vandros Prime, a mid-tier hive world in the segmentum solar, not wealthy, not destitute. Just average. My father worked maintenance in the lower manufactorum levels. My mother died giving birth to me. Complications the medica couldn't explain. Looking back now, I wonder if I killed her. If even in the womb, my cursed gift was leaking out. The signs started when I was 11. Dreams that weren't dreams. I'd see things that hadn't happened yet. My father cutting his hand on a broken pipe 3 days before it occurred. A gang fight in the underhive that killed 17 people. I saw it the night before in perfect detail. The faces, the screams, the blood pooling in the recyc drains. Then came the incident that sealed my fate. We lived in Hab Block Theta 7, level 293. 2 families crammed into corroded living pods, sharing communal water and stale recycled air. One evening, I was walking back from the protein dispensary when I passed old Garrett's pod. Garrett was a veteran, lost his legs in the guard. Spent his days drunk on second-rate amasec. As I walked past his door, I felt something. A wrongness. A pressure building like a storm about to break. I knocked. No answer. The feeling intensified. A scream building in my skull that had no sound. I forced the door. Hab locks were garbage in the lower levels. Inside, Garrett was convulsing on his cot, foam bubbling from his mouth, eyes rolled back white. But that's not what made me freeze. There was something else in the room with him. I couldn't see it. Not with my eyes. But I felt it. Tasted it. A presence that reeked of copper and rot, hovering over Garrett's seizing form like a predator over wounded prey. It hadn't fully manifested yet. But it was close. So close, I didn't think. Didn't plan. I just reached out with whatever this thing inside me was and pushed. The air shrieked. The lights exploded. Every glass surface in the hab shattered simultaneously. And the thing, whatever was trying to claw its way into our reality through Garrett's dying mind, recoiled. I felt it retreat. Felt it slip back through the cracks between worlds, howling in frustrated rage. Garrett stopped seizing. Started breathing normally. He'd survive, but I'd been seen, felt. The psychic discharge lit me up like a flare to anyone sensitive enough to notice. The black ships arrived 4 days later. You don't resist the black ships. Everyone knows this. From the moment you're old enough to understand speech, it's drilled into you. The Emperor protects, and the Emperor requires. Psykers are necessary. They power the Imperium's communication, navigation, warfare. But they're also desperately dangerous. One untrained psyker can doom an entire world. So when the Adeptus Astra Telepathica came for me, my father didn't fight. He just held me for a long moment, his rough hands shaking against my shoulders, and whispered, "Serve the Emperor. Make it mean something." Then I was led away. The collection facility was in the upper hive, a massive fortress of black stone covered in wards and hexagrammic symbols. Hundreds of children were already there, some crying, most just empty. Shock, maybe, or acceptance. We were processed, catalogued, tested. The testing was worse than anything I'd imagined. They stripped us naked and chained us to brass rings set into obsidian floors. Inquisitorial psychers, cold-eyed men and women with purity seals stapled to their flesh, probed our minds with brutal efficiency. They weren't gentle. Gentleness didn't matter. They needed to gauge our strength, our control, our corruption level. I felt them rifling through my memories like someone ransacking a room. Every private thought, every shameful moment, every dream, all of it exposed and examined under their clinical scrutiny. Some children started screaming. A few died, their minds breaking under the invasive pressure, blood running from their eyes and ears. I survived, barely. When it was over, I was graded Theta class, mid-range psychic potential, dangerous enough to require immediate transport, valuable enough to keep alive, for now. We were loaded onto the black ship Eternal Vigil 3 days later. The ship was exactly what you'd imagine. A lightless prison designed to contain the most dangerous cargo in the galaxy. Holds lined with psychic dampeners, walls carved with suppression runes, servitors with dead eyes monitoring every corridor. The journey to Terra took 4 months. 4 months in darkness. 4 months of screaming. Some children couldn't handle the isolation, the terror of what awaited. They broke, turned. Let something from the warp slip inside them. I watched a boy named Kellyan transform over the course of 3 days. Started talking to things that weren't there. Started laughing at nothing. Then his eyes changed color. Flickered between human brown and something else. Something luminous and hateful. The guards killed him immediately, burned his body in the ship's furnaces. We all smelled it, the sweet, greasy smoke of burning human flesh. It was a lesson, a reminder. We weren't people anymore. We were weapons waiting to be used, or threats waiting to be eliminated. Terror, holy terror, throne world of the God Emperor, heart of the Imperium, cradle of mankind. I'd imagined it would be beautiful. It wasn't. Don't misunderstand. It was majestic. Overwhelming. The scale of it defied comprehension. Continents entirely covered in city. Hive spires that pierced the clouds. The imperial palace sprawling across what was once called Asia. A monument so vast it could be seen from orbit, but beautiful. No. Terra was a corpse. A dead world kept functioning through sheer stubbornness and faith. The oceans were gone. Boiled away millennia ago. The atmosphere was toxic, sustained only by colossal atmospheric processes. The sky was a permanent grey-brown, choked with industrial pollutants from 10,000 years of endless production. This was humanity's shining jewel, our eternal capital, a tomb pretending to be alive. We disembarked under heavy guard. Sisters of Silence, the anathema, the solace ones. Just being near them was agony. Their null presence made my skin crawl, made the psychic sense I'd grown accustomed to sputter and die like a candle in a vacuum. We were marched through processional corridors the size of city streets. Everywhere, the Imperium's grandeur pressed down on us. Statues of heroes 50 meters tall, murals depicting glorious conquests painted on walls you could land a thunderhawk on. Servo skulls buzzing overhead, red eyes tracking our movements, and everywhere, the sensation of presence. Something immense and terrible and holy radiating from the heart of the palace. The Emperor, even at this distance, even through kilometers of reinforced stone and psychic shielding, you could feel him. A pressure like standing at the bottom of an ocean, a light that burned behind your eyes even when they were closed. This was terror. This was the reality behind the Imperium's propaganda. Grandeur and horror, holiness and decay, all mashed together into something that defied easy understanding. We were taken to the Scholastica Psykana, the training facilities where young psykers were sorted and prepared for their eventual roles. Some would become sanctioned psykers, trained in soul, bound to resist warp corruption, deployed throughout the Imperium as astropaths or military assets. Others would become fodder, battery components for the Golden Throne, fuel for the Astronomican. The Scholastica Psykana wasn't a school, not really. It was a sorting facility, a processing plant for human souls. We were divided into groups based on our psychic ratings. I was placed in dormitory Theta 198 with 47 other Theta class psychers. Our quarters were Spartan, stone bunks, thin blankets, a single nutritional dispenser that provided flavorless protein paste twice daily. But at least we weren't in the lower levels. I caught glimpses of those sometimes, when the guards marched us through the facility's deeper sections, the outer and Kappa classes, the weakest psychers, the ones whose talents were too minor to be useful for anything except fuel. They were kept in massive holding pens, thousands of them crammed together in darkness, barely fed, barely clothed, waiting, just waiting for their turn to be consumed. The sounds from those levels haunted my dreams, moaning, weeping, sometimes screaming, sometimes singing, broken, desperate hymns to the Emperor, begging for salvation that wouldn't come. Our training began immediately. It wasn't what I expected. We weren't taught to master our powers or control our gifts. We were taught to suppress them, to lock them down, to build walls inside our minds and hide behind them. The instructors, mostly inquisitorial acolytes and failed astropaths, drilled this into us with relentless brutality. Control meant survival. Loss of control meant death, or worse, possession, corruption, transformation into a doorway for warp spawn. We meditated for hours under psychic suppression fields. We practiced mental exercises designed to strengthen our willpower. We studied the Tarot Imperialis and learned to recognize the signs of warp taint. And we watched, every week, as some of our number failed. A girl named Maris lost control during meditation, started bleeding from her eyes and laughing, a sound that wasn't quite human. The instructors killed her before she could fully turn, burned her corpse in the facility's furnaces. A boy named Davin tried to escape, made it 3 corridors before the Sisters of Silence caught him. They didn't kill him, just dragged him back and made an example. Had him publicly beaten, then sent him straight to the lower levels with the outer class culls. We learned quickly: obey, suppress, survive. Those were the only rules that mattered. But even as we obeyed, even as we built our mental walls and suppressed our gifts, we all knew the truth. Most of us wouldn't become sanctioned psychers. Most of us were just being kept alive until the Astronomican needed feeding. Part 50. The soul-binding 3 years I spent in the Scholastica. 3 years of meditation, suppression, and terror. 3 years watching my fellow psychers get sorted into their final categories. The talented ones, the alpha and beta classes, were taken for specialized training. They'd become astropaths or primaris psychers or even inquisitorial operatives. They were valuable. They had futures. The rest of us, we just waited. Then came my 18th birthday, if you could still call it that. The administratum kept meticulous records. On the exact day of my birth, I was summoned to the chamber of sanctioning. I hoped. It meant I'd be soul-bound, turned into an astropath. It was a brutal process, but survivable. You'd emerge blind, scarred, forever changed, but alive, functional, useful. I was wrong. The chamber of sanctioning was a vast circular room carved from black marble. Psychic wards covered every surface, spirals and hexagrams and symbols from dead languages, all pulsing with a faint golden light. At the center stood a throne, simple, unadorned, made from the same dark stone as the walls, and in that throne, waiting, was a representative of the Adeptus Astronomica. He was old, impossibly old, skin like parchment, eyes milky white, skull visible beneath tissue, thin flesh, but his mind blazed like a star. I could feel his power from across the room, a presence that dwarfed anything I'd encountered. "Approach," he whispered. His voice was dust and wind. I did. My legs felt like water. He stared at me with those dead eyes for a long moment. I felt him probing my mind, my soul, weighing me with a precision that made the earlier testings feel like gentle caresses. Finally, he spoke. "You are Theta 2 Unseen, Marcus. Theta class psyker. Moderate potential, moderate control, moderate corruption resistance." He paused. "You will not be soul-bound." My heart stopped. "You will serve the Astronomican. Your soul will burn to guide humanity's ships through the darkness. You will join the Choir Telepathica and sing the Emperor's light across the galaxy." He said it like it was an honor, like I should be grateful. "The Astronomican hungers constantly," he continued, his voice taking on a ritualistic quality. 10,000 psykers sustain it at any given moment. 10,000 souls burning in unison to create the psychic beacon that makes interstellar travel possible. Every day, some of those souls are consumed, burned to ash by the sheer power channeled through them. Every day, they must be replaced. He leaned forward slightly. "You are a replacement. I wasn't sent to the Astronomican immediately. There's a waiting period, a final preparation. They call it the contemplation of service, but that's a polite euphemism for what it really is. Slowly breaking your will so you don't resist when they feed you into the psychic furnace." I was moved to a new facility, the chambers of final preparation, located deep beneath the Imperial Palace. Deeper than I thought possible. We descended for hours in massive industrial elevators, passing through layers of ancient construction, each level more archaic than the last. The oldest sections didn't even look human. Geometric patterns that hurt to observe. Materials that predated the Imperium. Pre-Unity Terra, maybe even older. The chambers themselves were surprisingly comfortable. Individual cells with actual beds, regular meals, even limited recreation. It felt obscene, like fattening livestock before slaughter. There were others there with me. Hundreds, maybe thousands of psykers in various stages of preparation. We were allowed to interact, to talk, to form connections. Another cruelty. Give us companionship right before stripping away everything that makes us individuals. I met others who'd been sentenced to the Astronomican. We didn't call it that. The term felt too heavy, too final. We called it the Choir, like we were going to sing in some grand cathedral rather than burn as psychic fuel. There was Tana, a beta, class from a death world called Luther's Rock. She'd been a tribal shaman before the black ships came. She taught me meditation techniques from her homeworld, ways to center yourself, to find peace in the eye of chaos. There was Greven, an alpha, class who'd failed his sanctioning trials. Too powerful to control safely, too valuable to waste. He'd be placed in the Choir's inner ring, the most intense position, where the psychic pressure was strongest. He knew he'd last days at most. He spent his time in the chambers writing poetry. Bad poetry, but heartfelt. And there was Carl. Carl was Theta, class like me. We'd actually trained together in the Scholastica, but had barely spoken. In the chambers, though, we gravitated toward each other, found comfort in shared fear. We talked about everything, our lives before, The worlds we'd never see again. The dreams we'd abandoned. Do you think it hurts? Kale asked one night, lying on his bunk and staring at the ceiling. When they finally put us in, I didn't have an answer. I think it does, he continued. I think it hurts terribly, but only for a moment. Then you're just gone. Dissolved into the light. Maybe that's not so bad, I said. Becoming something greater than yourself. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the naked terror in his eyes. I don't want to be greater, he whispered. I just want to be. We spent 2 months in the chambers, 2 months of waiting, 2 months of dread building like a slow rising tide. Then one morning the guards came. It was time. We were woken before dawn, not that there's really day or night this deep beneath the palace. Time becomes meaningless here. There's just existence, stretched thin across moments that blur together. The guards, Lucifer Blacks, the Emperor's elite, came silently, professional. They didn't speak, didn't need to. We all knew what this was. We were dressed in simple white robes, no shoes, no possessions, nothing but the cloth and our terror. Then we were lined up. The procession stretched impossibly long. I couldn't see the beginning or end. Just an endless line of white, robed figures shuffling forward through corridors, carved from stone that remembered the age of strife. No one spoke. What was there to say? I saw Carl ahead of me in line. His shoulders were shaking, weeping probably, though I couldn't hear it over the rhythmic shuffling of thousands of bare feet on stone. Tana was somewhere behind me. I felt her presence, her psychic signature, familiar and comforting even now. Greven was in a different procession. The high-intensity candidates moved separately, kept apart from us lesser offerings. We walked for hours. The corridors changed as we descended. The architectural style shifted, from Imperial Gothic to something older, stranger, pre-Unity construction. Maybe even Dark Age of technology. The walls began to glow with a faint golden luminescence that had no natural source. And we began to feel it. The Astronomican. At first, it was subtle. A warmth at the edge of perception. A gentle pull, like standing near a fireplace on a cold day. But with each step it intensified. The warmth became heat. The pull became pressure. The gentle sensation became a roaring, howling presence that pressed against our minds with the weight of a collapsing star. People started falling. A woman 3 rows ahead collapsed, blood streaming from her nose. The guards simply stepped around her, left her convulsing on the floor. She wasn't important anymore. She'd already broken before reaching the choir. Worthless. A man began screaming, high and shrill like a wounded animal. He clawed at his own face, gouging bloody furrows in his cheeks. The guards put him down with a single bolt round to the skull. The shot echoed in the enclosed space. No one else reacted. We just kept walking. The pressure was incredible now, like trying to stand in a hurricane, like drowning in light. My nose started bleeding. I tasted copper, felt something vital inside me beginning to crack under the strain. We weren't even there yet. This was just the proximity to the Astronomican, just the spillover from its terrible glory. What would it be like when we actually entered the chamber? The entrance to the choir chamber was a gate 40 meters tall. It was carved from a single piece of some golden material I couldn't identify. Not gold, but something that resembled it, contained it. The surface was covered in inscriptions in dozens of languages. High Gothic, Low Gothic, languages that predated human spaceflight. Languages that might not be human at all. All of them said the same thing, repeated over and over. Here burns the Emperor's light. Here dies the darkness. Here we give ourselves. Eternal. The gate opened silently despite its immense size. Beyond was light, pure, blinding, absolute light. We entered. The choir chamber defied description. It was vast, so vast that the far walls were lost in glowing haze. The architecture was impossible, angles that shouldn't work, spaces that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. At the center, impossible to look at directly, was the Astronomican itself. It wasn't a physical object. It was a concept made manifest. A psychic construct of such staggering power that reality bent around it. Imagine staring into the sun. Now imagine that sun is made of human souls, 10,000 of them, all burning in psychic unison to create a light visible across the entire galaxy. That's the Astronomican. Around the central light, arranged in concentric circles, were the Choir, thousands of psykers sitting in carved stone thrones, their bodies locked in place by brass restraints. Some were still recognizably human. Others had been there so long they'd begun to change, skin turned translucent, eyes blazing with internal fire, features blurring as their individual identities dissolved into the gestalt consciousness of the Choir. They were all singing, not with voices, with their souls, a psychic hymn of such complexity and beauty and horror that hearing it felt like having your mind flayed open. It was ecstasy and agony woven together into something transcendent and terrible. The song had words, but not in any language I knew. They bypassed language entirely and spoke directly to something primal in the human psyche. Burn, guide, protect, eternal light against eternal dark. We are the beacon. We are the Emperor's voice singing through the warp. We are consumed. We are eternal. We were led to our positions by tech priests. Red, robot figures more machine than flesh. Their eyes glowing with cold, augmetic light. They moved through the Choir chamber with practiced efficiency, checking connections, adjusting positions, replacing those members of the Choir who had burned out. I saw them removing bodies, or what remained of bodies. Some were just husks, skin stretched over bone, all moisture and life burned away. Others had simply dissolved, reduced to ash that still sat upright in the throne restraints, holding shape through sheer psychic inertia. This would be me. Soon. My assigned position was in the 3rd ring, middle distance from the central light. Not the most intense exposure, but far from safe. According to the coldly delivered briefing we'd received in the chambers of final preparation, 3rd ring Choir members typically lasted between 3 months and a year before complete burnout. 3 months to a year. That's what remained of my life. The throne was warm when I sat. The previous occupant had only just been removed. I could still see the indentation of their body in the brass and stone, could still smell the faint char, scent of burned flesh. The tech priest working my station was efficient and utterly impersonal. It clamped brass restraints around my wrists, ankles, and throat. Locked them tight. I couldn't move anything except my head, and even that was limited. Then it attached the neural interface. Dozens of cables, organic-looking things that writhed with faint internal movement, were plugged directly into ports that the tech priest opened in my skull, spine, and chest. I felt each connection like ice and fire simultaneously injected into my nervous system. I screamed. Couldn't help it. The tech priest didn't react, just continued its work with mechanical precision. When the connections were complete, I felt everything. The Choir's song flooded into me. 10,000 voices, 10,000 souls, all merged into a single gestalt consciousness. I could feel their thoughts, their emotions, their memories, all bleeding together into an ocean of psychic noise. And beneath it all, vast and terrible and holy, was him, the Emperor. I felt his presence like a star pressed against my mind. He wasn't conscious. Not in any way I understood. The thing sitting on the golden throne wasn't a person anymore. It was a force, a psychic construct of unimaginable power, kept functioning through sheer will and the sacrifice of psykers like me. But even reduced to a barely living weapon, Even trapped in a prison of gold and decay, he was magnificent. The sheer power radiating from him dwarfed anything I'd imagined possible. And I understood, finally, what the Astronomican really was. It wasn't just a lighthouse. It wasn't just a navigation beacon. It was the Emperor's voice singing through the warp. It was his will, projected across the galaxy, holding back the darkness through nothing but stubborn, relentless, suicidal determination. And we were his instrument. Part 4, The Burning Begins. The integration process took hours. My individual consciousness, everything that made me me, was slowly dissolved into the greater whole of the choir. Marcus ceased to exist as a separate entity. I became part of the song. At first, it was horrifying. Imagine drowning, but instead of water, you're drowning in other people's minds. Their memories crash into yours. Their fears become your fears. Their pain becomes your pain. I experienced Tanna's death. She'd been placed in the second ring, closer to the heart of the Astronomican. Her burnout took less than a day. I felt her consciousness fragment, felt her scream as the psychic fire consumed her from within, reducing her soul to ash and scattered light. I experienced Greven's agony. In the first ring, the inner circle, the full weight of the Emperor's power bore down on him with crushing force. He lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of absolute torment as every aspect of his being was incinerated, used as fuel to sustain the beacon for just a few more moments. I experienced thousands of others, their lives, their deaths, all blurring together into a tapestry of sacrifice and suffering. But then, gradually, something else emerged. Purpose. I began to understand what we were doing, why this was necessary. The warp is chaos. Pure, screaming, malevolent chaos. It's a dimension of nightmares and predators, where physics means nothing and the laws of reality are just suggestions. Traveling through it should be impossible. Humans aren't meant to exist in that space. But we do, because of the Astronomican. Our song creates a psychic beacon so powerful, so bright, that it can be perceived even through the madness of the warp. Ships navigate by it, follow it home. Without the Astronomican, interstellar travel would be impossible. The Imperium would shatter into a million isolated fragments. Humanity would die. So we suffer. We sacrifice everything we are, and the light continues. Part 50. Time in the choir. Time stops meaning anything in the choir. There's no day or night this deep beneath the palace. No change in light or temperature. Just the endless song and the endless burning. I don't know how long I lasted. Weeks. Months. The experience is impossible to quantify. When your consciousness is merged with 10,000 others, when you're experiencing multiple lifetimes simultaneously, conventional chronology becomes meaningless. But I have impressions, memories, fragments. I remember feeling ships navigate by our light. Thousands of them, scattered across the galaxy, all following the Astronomican home. Pilgrim vessels carrying the faithful to Terra, Navy warships deploying to distant fronts, merchant freighters hauling goods between systems, all of them dependent on us, all of them surviving because we burned. I remember the casualties. Every day, every hour, members of the choir burned out completely, their souls consumed, their bodies reduced to husks, and every hour, new psykers were brought in to replace them. The song never stopped, never faltered. It couldn't. If the Astronomican went dark, even for a moment, ships would be lost, millions would die. So we sang, and burned, and were replaced. I remember the dreams, if you can call them that. When you're part of a psychic gestalt, you sometimes catch glimpses of things beyond normal perception. I saw the golden throne, felt its ancient mechanisms grinding away, barely holding together after 10,000 years of constant operation. I saw the Emperor, not as he is now, a corpse god trapped in a decaying prison, but as he was, glimpses of memory from the older members of the Choir, psykers who'd been burning for centuries, their perceptions blending past and present into a confused whole. I saw a being of terrible majesty, a warrior, a scholar, a tyrant, a savior, all of these things and more, wrapped in a shell of gold and glory that hid something far stranger underneath. And I felt his pain. The thing on the golden throne suffers, constantly, eternally. Every moment of every day for 10,000 years, he has endured agony beyond human comprehension. The psychic feedback from the throne, the weight of sustaining the Astronomican, the slow decay of his physical form, all of it compounds into a suffering that would shatter any normal mind instantly. But he endures, because he must, because if he fails, humanity dies. We were singing his pain, channeling it, transforming it into light that guided humanity through the darkness. My body was failing. I could feel it even through the gestalt consciousness of the Choir. My physical form, locked in its brass throne, was slowly being consumed by the psychic fire burning through it. My skin had turned translucent. I could see my bones through it, could see my organs laboring beneath tissue that had become more concept than flesh. My eyes blazed with internal light. I couldn't close them anymore, couldn't blink, just stared forward into the impossible radiance of the Astronomican, my retinas long since burned away. My vision now purely psychic. I wasn't eating anymore. The neural feeds provided some kind of nutrient paste directly into my system, but my digestive tract had atrophied. My body was running on psychic energy now, sustained by the same force that was destroying it. I could feel my mind fragmenting, memories dissolving, my sense of self eroding like a sandcastle in the tide. I forgot my father's face, forgot Vandro's prime, forgot the smell of the lower hive, the taste of protein paste, the feeling of walking through corridors under my own power. All of it burning away, fuel for the light. I was dying, slowly, inexorably, transformed from a person into a battery component, from an individual into a single note in an eternal song. And the worst part, I didn't care anymore. The pain should have been unbearable. The loss of self should have been terrifying. But the gestalt consciousness of the Choir washed away individual suffering, dissolved it into something greater, something almost transcendent. I was becoming the light, and the light was beautiful. Near the end, however long that was, I experienced something unprecedented, a vision, a moment of clarity that cut through the gestalt consciousness like a blade. I saw the Imperium as it truly was. Not the propaganda, not the glorious crusade for humanity's manifest destiny, but the reality. I saw a galaxy dying, 10,000 years of brutal warfare, religious fanaticism, and technological stagnation grinding humanity down into something barely recognizable. I saw worlds consumed by eternal conflict, hive cities where trillions lived and died in absolute squalor, forge worlds where slaves were literally built into machinery, their flesh merged with metal, their consciousness reduced to simple operational parameters. I saw the Inquisition burning entire populations to purge minor heretical contamination. I saw guard regiments, millions of soldiers, sacrificed as disposable distractions in campaigns that achieved nothing. I saw the Adeptus Mechanicus hoarding ancient technology, while the Imperium crumbled around them. I saw suffering on a scale that beggared comprehension, and I saw why it continued. Because of the Astronomican, because of the Golden Throne, because we keep the Emperor alive. If he dies, the Imperium dies, and if the Imperium dies, humanity dies. That truth has been hammered into us since the moment the black ships took us. But now, as I burned within the Choir, I finally saw the full cruelty of it. The Imperium is not a paradise preserved by his sacrifice. It is a prison, a galaxy-wide tomb, and we, psyker fuel, are the mortar between its stones. I saw him in my vision, Not as he is, rotting and bound to that terrible machine, but as he was, golden, eternal, eyes burning with fire that could topple gods, a being who dreamed of a unified humanity, a species lifted above petty superstition and darkness. And then I saw the truth of the millennia since. That dream is ash. The Imperium is a parody of everything he once wanted. Worshippers bowing to a corpse, priests chanting litanies he never desired, trillions enslaved in his name, all sustained by the endless burning of psykers like me. We are not saving humanity. We are prolonging its agony. The vision broke me. I tried to scream, to wrench free, to resist the choir's binding. But my mouth no longer worked. My body no longer answered to me. I was a husk, shackled and singing. My rebellion nothing more than a thought echoing pointlessly in a sea of 10,000 voices. And then, something else. For a heartbeat, I felt him. Truly felt him, the Emperor. Not the force, not the pressure, not the gestalt radiance, but the man, the warrior, the father. And in that instant, I understood something that shattered me more than any pain or any vision. He knows. He knows what the Imperium has become. He knows what horrors are done in his name. He knows that his dream has been twisted into tyranny and fanaticism. And he endures anyway, because the alternative is worse. If he dies, the warp floods unchecked into reality. If he dies, the beacon goes dark. Humanity becomes blind, lost in the storm, and the predators waiting in the Imperium will feast on us until there is nothing left. So he suffers. So we burn. So the Imperium staggers on, a shambling corpse of an empire, too monstrous to live, too vital to die. I saw all of this in the space of a single psychic breath. And then it was gone. The choir swallowed me whole again. My individuality unraveled like smoke. My memories fell apart like brittle parchment. Vandro's prime, my father's hands, Kyle's terrified eyes. They slipped through me, dissolving into the endless song. And still, the light burned. Still, the Astronomican blazed across the galaxy. And somewhere, in the depths of my fading soul, I thought, this is what happens when you're fed to the Astronomican. You become nothing. You become everything. You become the fire that keeps a dying empire alive for one more day. And when you are gone, another will take your place. The line never ends. If this story unsettled you, if the thought of feeding the Astronomican stays with you when the lights go out, then share this video so the tale spreads further. Like it to keep the light burning. And subscribe if you want more voices from the grim darkness of Warhammer 40K. Because in this universe, stories are the only thing that endure.